the power to freeze, the speed of light, can make his own ice city, and even stabs Thor. I mean, what are you supposed to do when somebody's in the shower minding their own business and they can attack you as literal vapor? That's what Iceman can do in this occasion with Mystique. People gotta start putting respect on the element of ice. I mean, when it comes to the man Iceman from Marvel Comics, his only main flaw is himself holding himself back. I mean, most of the time, Iceman has morals, so he actually does hold back, by the way. So when his full power gets unleashed, he can cause catastrophic damage. You probably thought Esdeath from, the anime character, you probably thought she was the only character that can actually freeze time itself. You're going to see a lot of impressive things throughout this video when it comes to Iceman, but Iceman proved he can freeze time itself, freezing space-time around him at a quantum level, a level of code that breaks physics. They even used the term mutant magic or something else entirely. It was so bad to where even if you got near him, reality would start freezing the closer you get to him, like reality itself. Because there was this being known as the Black Winter. A piece of this guy's power, the Black Winter, got out. This Cosmos Eater's power got out. Despite this guy being amped up more than beyond belief, Iceman's literally boxing it out with this same being. Keep in mind, this little piece of the Black Winter, like the full Black Winter is a being that messed up the previous universe or cosmos. And this is who Iceman is freaking fighting, y'all. Oh boy. Honestly, this being known as Iceman should be called the Ice Deity. He's really the main being that makes ice look cool. The movies don't really showcase it like they should. See, in the comics, he's one of them beings you always see with the X-Men roster, the team, the organization. And if you got all your knowledge from watching the movies, you wouldn't know that he's actually an Omega level mutant. Even Black Order members say it. An Omega level mutant is a mutant whose dominant power is deemed to register or reach an undefinable upper limit of that power specific classification. A person under the Omega level mutant can hypothetically be surpassed when it comes to that particular power, but when the full potential when it comes to Omega level, it can't really be surpassed. They even go as far as saying an Omega level's power is a single power. Most people have more than one power. For example, Jean Grey is both a telepath and a telekinetic. She's only an Omega level telepath apparently. But Iceman is temperature manipulation. You know you're Omega level when the character calls himself Omega level. Stated to be an Omega level mutant here. See, comics has a lot of adventures. See, throughout the adventures, there's times where Iceman would underestimate himself. Heck, there was even a time where other characters would possess his body and they would underestimate his power, but then they realized later on that his powers is almost without limit. This is when Emma Frost was possessing Iceman right here. Like, there was even a point where he couldn't turn his organs into ice and stuff. So over the years, this particular situation is low-key. There would be times where they would unleash his power to too much of a degree when he wasn't even willing to do so. But then this is kind of what revealed Iceman's true power, when the villains would use his power for their own selfish gain. And then all the events after this, they just kept building upon this progress. Iceman would further learn the different stuff he can do. Like this dude, for example, helped Iceman get more manifestation of his power. Beings would even use his body and they would be like, wow, he's done things that Iceman never could do in the past. So it shows his progress on how others would use his abilities, like Frost here. You could say Iceman is his own worst enemy. There'd be times where telepaths have to amplify his head, even though he technically should be able to do this without their help. They even talk about it during the Apocalypse amp. There was apparently an amp, but it wasn't. It was just freeing his mind to its own full potential. So these amps wasn't really amps. Matter of fact, his powers were getting so great, he had to wear an inhibitor belt to like kind of low-key keep his power under control. I mean, when you can fight your younger self and win, it lets you know you've been improving over time. Like, you can literally blow holes in him. He can come back after being shattered. Since Iceman can kind of control water, he can choose whether or not he wants his body to be fluidy, to where it's pretty much hard to actually land an actual hit on him. Like, you see how the stuff just goes through him. Yeah, he's an actual Loggia from One Piece. Like, cutting his head off is literally pointless. Due to Iceman's physiology, due to the fact he can turn into actual ice, he can literally let the poison molecules of his body dissipate into vapor. He remade himself out of fresh, clean ice, poison free. In a way, he can push the poison out of his own body, sense the moisture in the air. I mean, matter of fact, at his full potential, he's almost like a god, because technically he can be in snow all around you, just like I'm in the snow and ice and water everywhere in the world at this exact moment. He can be kind of omnipresent because all that stuff is everywhere. Ice is one of those abilities to where most people can't do much if they're frozen, for example. Like, you don't necessarily need a lot of raw concussive blunt force to defeat people when your power is ice, because there's been more than one occasion of Iceman blasting with absolute zero. He can freeze you on a molecular level. Characters like the Hulk, who are usually immune to ridiculous temperatures, talk about how cold Iceman's ice is. It's unrealistically cold. Insanely strong characters like Apocalypse even mention how insanely cold Iceman's ice is. A clear example of what I mean by hacks is that he can literally freeze the flow of blood in your brain. Like, why do you need super strength when you can do stuff like this? A signature thing ice type characters do is kind of this hacksy thing. They freeze something, make the thing less durable, they make it brittle, and then they shatter the thing that they lessen the durability of thanks to ice and stuff. I would advise you not to fight Iceman in an icy area. He could just kind of absorb the ice in the surrounding area to make himself mightier, using his ice for versatile ways. If you see a lot of superhuman physicals, let's just say he can kind of bulk himself up with ice to increase his physical stats on why he can punch hard in his ice mode. Like, the guy can literally grow ice muscles. He's practically an ice shapeshifter. He can practically make anything he wants in the shape of ice, even wings, claws. That's why at times you will see him wield an ice axe. We've even seen him lock swords with Deadpool. He can make scooters out of ice, give himself extra limbs, ice limbs, while boxing it out with Storm. This also proves he can pretty much hang with one of the heaviest hitters when it comes to the X-Men, and even turn himself into a literal ice train. In a way, you can say he can make ice clones of himself, or one can say he can make ice clones or ice avatars, whatever you want to call it. You covered multiple different spots at the same time. Talk about being everywhere at once. This is probably one of the better ways to overwhelm your villains, like in this occasion with the ice clones against Red Hulk. I mean, Iceman's so complex, they even had to make like a notepad explaining everything about him, like his ice palace, a little bit of Bobby, and every bit of his ice, empathic display, a hologram basically, not psychic empathic, you feel it more than you see it, reacts to Bobby's emotion state no matter where he is in the world, makes what's happened inside Iceman visible to me outside. When Bobby breaks down out there, it should break down in here. Like this ice palace right here, right? This is basically his ice, him thinking out loud, talking to himself. Like, yeah, this is kind of crazy to think about. He can make these little avatars of himself go away when he needs, blah, blah, blah. The reason why this stuff is like this, don't ask. He kind of got like a scattered consciousness at this point in time. Yeah, okay, I ain't gonna lie. Iceman kind of reminds me of an artist on all the different sculptures of ice he makes. It kind of reminds me of Green Lanterns. He made an ice construct that can focus energy. I mean, how are you supposed to dodge a guy that can make raining fists? He can give you hypothermia, areas that were previously frozen, he can unfreeze them. I mean, hard ice is good for defense. So, of course, he can shield himself and his friend. He's got superhuman qualities, like when it comes to muscle and stuff. Like muscle, large muscled ice. No, it's not just headcanon when they state in the handbooks that Iceman can literally increase his strength and durability with his icy forms that bulk him up. Lifting grown folks against the wall kind of implies his muscle compared to normal humans. Do you think a normally strong human could wield an axe like this and actually move it around fast? Would you agree that it's a fair assumption to assume whatever his ice golems can do, he can do, because he could technically make himself bigger with ice muscle? Here, for example, we see he can lift this, but he says, let me make something strong enough to actually lift this. So in turn, it's like he can lift vehicles too that weigh several tons or a couple tons. So we already know him or his ice golems or ice avatars he makes can lift vehicles above their head. And let's just say, you can tell his punches or kicks aren't light when he can just ram through doors like this. He technically has a lot of blast power by default. I mean, he can just make a big ice construct and just hit you with the weight of the ice itself. So in a weird way, yeah, he can just hit hard in a blunt way, not just hacksy. I think we all can agree he can hit harder than Super Soldier Tears. I mean, he knocked out Captain America with some ice to the back of the head. Well, let's just say he hit Captain America with an ice strike from the back of the head. You know the weight of his hits have a lot of weight. I mean, he's doing this to Frost Giants, beings that fight Thor. He can hit this hard. But right here is what I would call blast power. Like, he literally broke a helicopter with an ice blade construct he made. We actually seen him concussively blow away a house. Yeah, imagine ice dense enough that can get so large and thick that it devastates a house. Oh, man. You guys know Sentinels can get abnormally large. He can knock these things back with his ice blast. And there's clear evidence he can blast away a building. Like you see how he blasted a part of a building off right here. Seems to be with laughable ease. So yes, he can blast down buildings. Take a look at all this ice he can produce to mess up this ship. Here's some other angles of all the ice he generated compared to the size of the freaking ship. How many stories tall do you think this slab of ice he just instantly created is? Like, he made his own icy building-sized Christmas tree just to get a perspective on how small he is in comparison to it. I mean, we did see Iceman make his own iceberg under this boat. I mean, when Iceman can make large ice constructs like this and increase his size to fight large beings like this, yeah, beings bigger than trees, yep, Of course, the weight of his attacks would change if his body's a lot larger and a lot heavier. The weight of his fists have to be heavier. Why wouldn't he be able to level a building when he can make avatars, ice avatar constructs of himself this large to just straight up stick these big sentinels? I mean, look at the surrounding buildings next to this. Notice how he's somewhere else chilling while this big thing is fighting. Night night to you, sentinels. I mean, he could basically give himself his own battle suit that makes humans or normal sized beings look this small in comparison to it. Like a Voltron-like bot, like with a sword and everything. Making his own giant ice robot or ice megazord. Like he's literally piloting it like a megazord, like from Power Rangers. Cutting up beings that are building sized and crap. I mean, he's such a nerd, he even names his move Ice Zord, like Megazord. Yeah. I mean, his ice can get hard enough to where it can support the weight of buildings, so. I mean, how hard do you think he can punch in a state like this? Look at him compared to buildings. Yeah, like he's legit so large, there's characters that's not even taller than his foot. Not to mention we literally seen him smash buildings with his fist, so. A good way on how to understand Iceman is to understand how much ice he can create at a moment's notice. How much ice can he create in like a split second or a second? Like some of this stuff is effortless on how much he can create, on how much ice he can create. On a whim, like can basically create his own little mini city. Look at this huge ice hill blast that can freeze the entire museum. This just gets ludicrous on how big this is compared to other buildings. Yeah, he can generate a lot of ice. A mountainous size he can like make ice over that quickly. It went from almost being completely encompassed to completely encompassed with ice. What's stopping Iceman from making a city block or multiple city block size piece of ice and just have that chunk of ice just land on a neighborhood and crush everybody? Couldn't he technically just blow away an entire town like this? Considering how much ice he can produce in a moment's notice? I mean, there'll be times where he can't control his ice and this is what it does to the surrounding area. So he can definitely blow away your whole town or city block with ice. I mean, he did blast and freeze over the mountain. They say Iceman's mountain. Let's just face it, if he made a giant ice blade, he can just cut through a mountain of his own accord. This is one of those feats where it's hard to measure, but I'm pretty sure it's impressive. Apparently, hell needs freezing over. He didn't freeze all of hell, but the lake of fire, he did freeze a big chunk though. What about exploding nuclear reactor type stuff? That is this crazy. Iceman can freeze. He had to produce a lot of ice on the whim to be able to freeze all of this before it even done any real damage. Think of him like a natural disaster ice nuclear bomb. He can literally create this much ice on New York City in mere moments. Like, yeah, he covered all of this, blasting with an ice-like nuclear bomb type blast. I mean, look how big he is in this ice mode, and look how he can make an ice thing to send him all the way to space. Like, yeah, he can generate that much ice. An ice log or pillar that's big enough to take him all the way to above Earth. Iceman can basically make a pillar as tall as certain cities are wide, if he can make one pillar that takes him all the way to space. Iceman did this kind of stuff in recent comics, launching this beam with this ice pillar, making an ice pillar all the way to low orbit. Imagine all this ice he generated. There's even statements that suggest Iceman is way above everything I pretty much mentioned. It's talked about when Iceman cuts loose, they wonder if he could freeze the whole world. And if you know anything about Marvel powerhouses, I definitely believe this is possible. Yeah, Iceman was kind of edgy in this comic, but Iceman did state himself he could kill the whole world. I mean, I kind of believe him. I mean, you can make all this ice with laughable ease. I mean, you guys know how mighty Marvel-based Thor is, right? Like, you know how durable Thor is, the stuff Thor has endured. When you see occasions like Iceman's ice being able to pierce the skin of Thor, it starts making you believe, yeah, he really could freeze the whole planet and just planet shatter, if we're being honest. I mean, because I shouldn't have to tell you all the stuff Thor has done and how durable Thor is. He's withstood universe-shattering type of explosions, blah, blah, blah. Thor-centric type beings clash their strikes together. They produce energy that's similar to the Big Bang, and their bodies can withstand being in the epicenter of all this force. I'll let these comic panels speak for themselves, that the shockwaves of Thor-level beings hitting each other go across the whole cosmos. So if these beings can withstand universe-shaking type of attacks, I'm pretty sure when they say stuff like Iceman can freeze the world or kill the world in a second, that's not really an exaggeration when they state crazy stuff like this. Think about the smaller planetoids like the moon. He would be able to freeze huge structures like this, like with no issues, really, if he himself stated he could freeze the entire planet, a bigger planet than a moon. If we were to take that statement seriously, he could cause crazy damage on a planetary scale just from the fact he can stab Thor. It's that simple. Depending on his bodies he's using at the time, there's certain moments where Mr. Sinister can slugfest with Colossus in physicals, but that's if he has the right clone or right body to do this at the time. You know, he'd be swapping bodies a lot and stuff. So there's no telling how strong this Mr. Sinister is, the one that Iceman's fighting, but I think it's impressive that Iceman is even boxing it out with Mr. Sinister still. All these different type of weapons Mr. Sinister has with prep time and such. Iceman still boxing and parrying this guy to show he can hang and even get the upper hand over heavy hitters. You know, there's a lot of Gamma family members in Marvel. You like the Hulk type family. You know, the Grey Hulk can still punch or point asteroids 2 times the size of Earth. Okay, so you guys know who She-Hulk is. There was these beings that duplicated the appearance of certain heroes. Not just their look, but their power. They are their duplicates and their equals. Nah, we're superior, they say. Trying to mimic She-Hulk. And Iceman has the blast power to do this to beings that are apparently the same tier of power as She-Hulk. And he got his inhibitor belt on. Large kaiju type creatures where the Hulk calls them a challenge. Like, you know, the Hulk likes to fight. He called this guy Fing Fang Foom a challenge. Iceman kinda started boxing it out with Fing Fang Foom. Iceman even showed out and got large like him too, to show there is weight behind his punches. Even when Fing Fang Foom used fire on Iceman, Iceman shot a whole bunch of shards at him and still was able to make a being bleed. Somebody that constantly be fighting Hulk and stuff. The weight of Iceman's hits can damage these beings. The weight of his hits was so crazy, he made Fing Fang Foom say, bye-bye, I don't feel like fighting no more. Like, Iceman was kind of crazy. I'm pretty sure you didn't know that Iceman can slugfest with beings like Fing Fang Foom. Like, honestly, guys, I shouldn't have to say this, but pretty much every Hulk Gamma family member, all of them can bust planets and stuff. So, yeah, all that planet shattering stuff for Iceman starts to make more sense when you look at these kind of battle feats. One of the powerhouses, like the Thing, that's very underrated. We see him kind of momentarily hold him for a little bit in ice. Blasted. Juggernaut back himself. He looks like he's got some discomfort in his face from Iceman's blast. These beings had pieces of the Phoenix Force's power. Yeah, Phoenix Force is like a cosmic being, so we see him kind of sort of knock the wind out of Phoenix Force. Cyclops, Guardian Demons, he can slow down. You know, this being the Stranger. You know, the guy we be seeing chilling with like abstracts and stuff. Iceman froze his eye beams. He had trouble knocking out a character like Juggernaut, so he said, let me just send you somewhere else. Iceman literally fought a being that can copy all the X-Men's powers. He even sang the song, anything you can do, I can do better. I can do anything better than you. Guys, put in perspective on all the beings that Wolverine's claws can cut, guys. They can literally cut any powerhouse. Regardless if Wolverine's strength isn't on their level, his claws can still cut the mightiest beings in the universe. Wolverine even has issues due to his thick Asgardian skin when it comes to Thor, even though we know Wolverine be cutting anybody. And Iceman, his ice is stated to be sharp as razors, and these ice shards can pierce Thor. Thor has literally withstood universe-shaking stuff, yet Iceman still can pierce him. What does that say about Iceman's striking power with his ice? His ice can be like dang near like adamantium. Just in case you think him stabbing Thor is BS, there's a reason why Thor looked nervous. Let me give you an example of the stuff Thor has withstood, like stuff that can cause a chain reaction to make a new big bang. Thor had to be right in the epicenter of this kind of stuff, like this life bomb. Thor was able to create something to contain something like this. His body can withstand this stuff. This is why stabbing into beings like Thor is impressive for Iceman. I'm not even talking about the recent stuff where Thor just basically became an all-father tier. Honestly, at this point, I wouldn't be surprised if he can freeze the entirety of the sun. And we know how pathetically small the Earth is compared to the sun. Yeah, Legion's somebody that's ridiculously overpowered. He was able to freeze every single molecule of water within Legion's body. Do you remember this dark thing known as the Black Winter? Iceman had to deal with this neighborhood of power. See, here's the thing. There was this cataclysmic event, extinction level. This being is a former herald of Galactus. There was a single speck of a Black Winter that gives him power. The narration says, looks like somebody found a tiny lingering flake of the Cosmos Eater, Universe Eater. A piece of that power, something Thor had to face in previous comic issues. The universal all-death will inevitably come, he states. And only this herald would survive in the next cosmos, next universe. So this being's pretty powered up. Iceman strikes this being with ice attacks. It appears Iceman is not in his league because this is what happened to Iceman at first. Freezing time itself, Iceman decides to go all out. It's talking about how Omega level means no upper limit to my mutant power. He says, I let it all flow through me more than ever before. Iceman earned his label Omega in this particular situation, literally boxing out with a speck of a universe eater. freezing stuff on a quantum level. They literally narrate on how he's breaking physics. It was so bad, even after all this stuff, reality itself was freezing everywhere near his vicinity. I want to break down on why even slugfesting with a speck or a little piece of the Black Winter is insane, because this being literally ended universes. The Black Winter killed the universe, or in this situation, technically the multiverse, before this new multiverse. Galactus devours worlds. The Winter comes for realities with an S. Based on the lore, they even talk about how the Black Winter is a threat for the multiverse. Just like how Eternity's a incarnation of the multiverse, there was like other ones, other personifications of the multiverse. Like, yeah, and Iceman literally saves the world from somebody that had a piece of the Black Winter's power. Not the whole thing, obviously, but a piece of it. All because Iceman was able to go all out more than he usually does. Iceman boxing it out with beings that are a threat for the cosmos. Let that sink in. That universe shattering stuff or shaking stuff, like I said, starting to make a lot more sense now, ain't it? You probably didn't know Iceman was this crazy. Do me a favor right quick and hit that like button. And thanks for the donos. Yo, Iceman crazy. I'm glad you are enjoying your time on the channel. Make sure you check out the playlist on the channel to see other How Strong videos. If you like what this channel is offering, make sure you hit that subscribe button, and I will see you guys later.